am Sadie Whitlow, 36 years old. I once believed that if I remained dependable, quiet, useful, never asking to be seen, there would always be a place set aside for me. But then I saw the photo of them laughing around the table. I helped sand seated on the bench. I painted with no space left open and no mention of my name. You're not going to your mom's thing. Stephanie just posted pics. Looks like the whole clan's there. And I understood some exclusions aren't accidents. They're arrangements made permanent by silence. I used to think they would always leave a space. I was wiping down the inside of the glass cabinet when the phone buzzed. The cloth I held still smelled faintly of lemon oil and old varnish. I didn't rush. The screen lit up once, then dimmed. When I finally checked it, Tara's name sat at the top of a message. You're not going to your mom's thing, Stephanie. Just posted pics. Looks like the whole clan's there. I clicked the link. It loaded slowly long enough for me to brace myself, though I hadn't known why. The photo wasn't posed. That made it worse. It looked real, natural. Everyone was mid-laugh or mid-bite. Dad's elbow rested on the faded picnic table. Mom leaned forward in her usual way, correcting someone's posture, even without speaking. Stephanie was wearing that mustard-colored cardigan, the one I gave her 2 years ago. She said it wasn't her color. The children were scattered like petals, Ava digging in the dirt, Connor holding a hot dog with too much ketchup, Lila tucked under Ruth's arm. No one looked like they had left a seat empty. There was no caption beyond a simple family day. No mention of why one chair might have been pushed back. No sign that a single plate had gone unused. Not even a mistaken tag or a comment saying, "Where's Sadie?" I zoomed in without meaning to. The bench near the porch had been freshly painted. I knew because I was the one who painted it last summer, spent 2 hours sanding the backrest, and another hour finding the right shade of slate blue. Stephanie was sitting on it now. Her sandals were resting right where I once spilled a drop of paint that never came out. I didn't call. I didn't text back. There was no misunderstanding to clarify, no logistics to unravel. No one had forgotten me by accident. Weeks ago, Mom left a voicemail. "You're always so busy, Sadie. It's easier if we just assume you won't come." And before that, at Ruth's birthday, Stephanie laughed while handing out envelopes. "Oh, sorry, yours must have gotten lost. But you're not big on gifts anyway, right? I once believed the absence of an invitation meant I mattered too much to be grouped in. Now, I understood. Some doors don't slam shut. They just never reopen." I placed the phone face down, then turned the cloth over in my hand. A small corner had started to fray. I kept wiping. I thought being useful would be enough. I used to arrive early before anyone else pulled into the driveway. I'd slip off my shoes at the door, wash my hands at the kitchen sink, and start peeling carrots without needing to be asked. The peeler always stuck slightly at the base, and I never said a word when it scraped my thumb. The bandage would go on after the meal. No one assigned me tasks. They simply let me do the parts no one else wanted. Dishes with food caked on, folding napkins after the children crumpled them into their juice cups, sweeping up pine needles after the tree came down long after everyone else had gone to bed. Once I offered to bring dessert for Christmas. I had already bookmarked a recipe for pecan tartlets and written a grocery list. Let Stephanie do it. You don't need to overcomplicate things. The words weren't sharp, just flat, like something repeated without thought. I folded the list and slipped it into my coat pocket. Never took it out again. Birthdays came and went. I bought the gifts. The kids never knew they weren't from their mother. I wrapped them carefully, nothing too flashy, just simple paper with clean seams and ribbon tied in quiet knots. At Ava's 5th, I stayed late to clean frosting from the carpet. Stephanie was already halfway to her car. "Don't scrub so hard. It's just a rented place." One November, she couldn't make the parent-teacher meeting. I went instead. The teacher called me Mom, twice. I didn't correct her. I brought back a note about reading levels and permission slips. Stephanie never mentioned it again. There were phone calls when Mom needed help rearranging the living room. I brought gloves even though no one else wore them. I lifted the couch while Dad pointed. "Not that way. You always turn things around backwards." Sometimes I left with my palms raw, and no container of leftovers, not even a paper plate. I told myself it was okay, that they noticed, that quiet effort carried weight, that not asking meant I was steady, that being forgettable was just another word for being trusted. I used to believe that staying useful would mean staying necessary, but the seat they saved wasn't mine. It was just the one no one else wanted. They always called me the one who didn't need checking on. At Dad's birthday dinner 2 years ago, the card sat upright beside the cake, propped carefully between his water glass and the edge of the dessert plate. It read in looping gold script, "From Stephanie and family." No one noticed when he opened it. I was the one who picked out the fountain pen. He'd been eyeing the one he used to underline Sunday crossword clues. He nodded at the card, looked at Stephanie and said, "You always get it right." I didn't say anything. I helped clear the plates and took the trash out back. When I got the promotion at work, I called home before anyone else. I stood in the break room holding the phone in one hand and a tea bag in the other. "Oh, does Stephanie know she'll want to say something? You know, she worries when she's not the first to hear things. The water never boiled." I threw the tea bag away dry. There's a photo on the wall above the piano in the old house. I've stopped looking at it, but I can still see it clearly. Stephanie is centered arms wrapped around the kids. Dad's hand is on her shoulder. Mom is caught mid-laugh. Ruth sits tall, her pearls perfectly in line. My face is turned just slightly to the side, half-lit. The glare from the lamp covers everything from my cheekbone to my chin. I asked once, without thinking if the photo could be updated. "You're barely in town." Mom looked past me. "And Stephanie's are the ones who keep the family together." At Thanksgiving last year, Cousin Melissa leaned toward Mom and whispered something about extra seating. I heard my name muffled brief. "Sadie can handle herself." "Don't fuss. She's not like the others." The cranberry sauce never made it around to my side of the table. I folded my napkin into a square and placed it on the plate untouched. I started keeping a drawer of cards no one signed. Notes I wrote, but never mailed. Receipts from gifts attributed to other names. At the back of the drawer is a slip of paper from a bakery I once went to alone on Christmas morning. The ink is smudged, the frosting long forgotten. But I remember the silence. It fit like something tailored. Being forgotten isn't always loud. Sometimes it's arranged, neatly, permanently. I never expected celebration to feel like exposure. The house had been filled with people all evening. Tara brought a lemon cake wrapped in linen. Brian ran his hand along the windowsill and nodded without words. Rachel opened every cabinet and smiled like the hinges were poetry. I stood mostly to the side, watching them touch what I had built carefully, gently, as if it meant something beyond wood and drywall. I kept glancing toward the door until I stopped noticing I was doing it. They came late, Mom first, then Dad, then Stephanie, trailed by the 3 small shadows. No one carried a gift. No one removed their coats. Stephanie let Lila drop her snack crumbs onto the new rug without a glance. No one looked up long enough to notice the corners I had painted by hand. When the room quieted, Lucas raised a glass and cleared his throat. To Sadie. For doing what most only talk about. Here's to patience and plaster. There was light clapping a few cheers. Someone whistled. I didn't know where to look. Then the room shifted. Mom stood. No glass, no smile. I won't pretend this is something we should be applauding. No one moved. Sadie lives alone. No children. No partner. What does she need a house this size for? Stephanie's the one trying to raise a family. The silence wasn't sharp. It sank low and spreading. Stephanie pulled the children closer, folding her arms around them like a worn blanket. One of them looked up confused. The other two leaned into her because they were told to. I caught Tara's eyes. She mouthed something, but I didn't hear it. From behind, I felt Dad shift his weight. A fork scraped a plate. This house could give those kids a chance. That's not selfish, it's practical. No one looked at me. They looked around me, through me. Stephanie's hands curled into her sleeves. Aunt Darlene's voice drifted from near the hallway. Family first. Always. Someone laughed nervously. Another picked up their drink and then put it down again. I stood still. I didn't move. I didn't raise my voice or lower my eyes. I found the seam in the hardwood floor and focused on where the planks didn't quite meet. It had taken me 8 years to afford those floors. 8 years of silence I thought would earn space. And in one breath, they asked me to prove I needed it. I didn't answer. I simply listened to the way the room didn't know what to do with my presence. Silence has a texture, and that night it felt like wet paper, thin, sagging and full of weight. I started with the wine glasses, not because they were the dirtiest, but because they were the most fragile. I rinsed each one under lukewarm water, the red tint trailing down like something faintly theatrical. One had a lipstick mark I didn't recognize. I didn't scrub it. I just turned it slowly in my hand, letting the stain swirl into the drain. The napkins had been pressed into odd shapes, some crumpled, others folded carefully, like apologies no one delivered. I gathered them without sorting, pressed them into the trash with one palm, and moved on. On the dining table, there was a spoon half submerged in tiramisu. The imprint of a child's finger ran through the cocoa dusting. I picked it up and washed it too. I remembered the time Mom called about her transmission failing. Just a few hundred, nothing major. You're not using that savings anytime soon. And the check I sent for Stephanie's attorney during the custody hearings. It's not like you have kids of your own to worry about. Each memory came back in faint watermarks, visible only if I tilted them toward a certain light. When the dishes were done, I stood in front of the bookshelf and stared at the photo frame wedged between 2 cookbooks. It was the last one I'd kept, a Christmas 4 years ago. Ruth in the middle, Stephanie's kids holding candy canes. I was cropped at the edge, half-turned, holding a tray of cookies I didn't eat. I opened the frame, slid the photo out without bending it, and placed it in the shallow drawer beside the measuring spoons. I shut the drawer slowly, letting it click. In the morning, the call came just after I folded the laundry. No greeting. You've had your celebration, Sadie. Now let's talk about being reasonable. A pause. It makes more sense if Stephanie takes over the house. She's already overwhelmed. This doesn't need to be complicated. I set the phone down before the voice finished. It buzzed once, twice, then stopped. Later, I walked to the living room, reached for the wall above the heater, and removed the small-framed family crest Dad once insisted I hang when I bought the house. I didn't break it. I didn't drop it. I wrapped it in an old towel and tucked it into the back of the hall closet. No one heard me speak that day, not because I couldn't, but because some things echo louder in the absence of sound. I didn't notice the birds until no one else was speaking over them. The morning after, I silenced the last number. I moved the dining table closer to the window, not because it made the space more practical, but because the light felt like something I hadn't earned, but still wanted. I wiped the surface slowly, tracing the outline of a faint watermark, shaped like an ellipse left by a cup no one claimed. The house stayed quiet, not empty, just unclaimed by expectation. I found the unopened box of linens at the back of the hall closet. The label had my name, my handwriting, and a date written in the corner. I had packed them 3 years ago when I thought I'd be moving into a shared space. It never happened. I opened the box now alone and unfolded a cotton duvet cover the color of faded oatmeal. No one else had picked it. That was enough. The old comforter, floral, synthetic familiar, was folded once then again and placed into a storage bin. The zipper caught slightly at the edge. I didn't force it. The group message stopped blinking. I deleted the chat thread, not out of defiance, just to make space. The silence afterward felt like an unclenched hand. I stood in the backyard and marked the corners of a future garden with stones I pulled from the edge of the fence. The ground hadn't been turned yet. The grass was patchy, but I drew lines with my heel and sketched beds in my head. Tomatoes here. Maybe sage. Something low and useful. I kept the chipped mug. It sat by the sink now, resting on a dish towel I hadn't folded properly. A thin crack ran from the rim to the base, almost invisible unless the light struck it just so. I turned it in my hands once each day, not to use it, but to remember where it gave way. The chip hadn't come from impact, just a small fracture from within, quiet and eventual. Stephanie once said you like being alone. That's your thing. Mom called it independence when she didn't know what else to say. No one ever asked what I kept when I stayed silent. And maybe that's why the birds were louder now. Not because they sang more clearly, but because I had finally stopped whispering beneath them. Silence is easier to break when you believe someone owes you something. The post came with no warning. A single photo carousel, dim lighting, toys scattered across a worn carpet, Stephanie sitting on the couch with all 3 children pressed into her sides. The caption read like a prayer, rewritten as an accusation. Some live in houses too big for one, while mothers struggle to hold their families together in cramped spaces. The first comment came from Aunt Darlene. This breaks my heart. Those kids deserve better. 32 missed calls. Some left voicemails. Family means sacrifice. You've got a spare bedroom, don't you? Sadie, this isn't about you anymore. No one asked if I was okay. No one wondered if I'd seen the post or needed to talk. I walked to Ruth's house the next morning. I didn't text first. I brought the post printed out folded once tucked behind a receipt. She hadn't seen it. She read it slowly without blinking and placed it on the table like something damp that might stain the wood. She didn't look at me when she spoke. They've stopped asking if you'll give it. They've decided you already should have. I nodded once. She reached into the drawer by the window, the one with old birthday cards and clipped recipes she never cooked. A pale envelope rested on top. It had been sealed before. Now it was open, the flap barely bent. She pulled out a page, unfolded it carefully, and handed it to me. A copy of her will. My name typed, but untouched. Blank spaces where amounts used to be. I thought fairness meant dividing things evenly, she said, but It's not fairness if only one of you ever carries the load. The envelope made a soft sound as it closed again. She didn't rush. I didn't tell her what the calls said. I didn't mention the message from Stephanie. You're not doing this to punish me, are you? Because that would be cruel. I didn't respond. Not to her. Not to any of them. I looked at the copy of the will and thought of the chipped mug resting in my sink, still drying from yesterday. I thought of how no one had noticed when I stopped answering. The house stayed silent. The air was still. And this time, silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like a door locked from the inside. I no longer wait for permission to take up space. The garden has begun to show signs of arrangement. Not perfection, but intention. I keep a small notebook on the porch rail, pages soft at the corners, margins filled with crossed-out ideas and sprouting dates. I log which plants lean toward the light and which ones stay compact, no matter how gently I water them. The work is small, but I do it daily. I reopened the blog without announcing it. No links posted, no emails sent. I wrote a piece about making broth from scraps, and another about learning to say no without explanation. A woman named Althea left a comment on one post. I never knew it was okay to keep things just for myself. I didn't reply. I just read it twice. A few weeks ago, I took a part-time position at the Women's Center across town. 2 afternoons a week, I teach budgeting basics to women who speak in half-whispers and carry folders too tightly against their ribs. I use my name, but not my history. They don't know about the house, or the dinners, or the deleted messages. They only know I bring a clean whiteboard and never interrupt. Stephanie once said, "You act like being responsible is a personality." I didn't respond then. I just moved the pot off the stove before it boiled over. Now, when Tara asks, "Are you doing okay?" I tell her, "Not all the way, but I don't feel invisible anymore." She nods and doesn't fill the silence. That's how I know she hears me. This morning I pulled a postcard from the mailbox. No stamp. No handwriting I didn't recognize. Just something I had mailed to myself 3 years ago during a workshop I barely remember attending. The handwriting was mine, less steady, more hopeful. "Dear future me, if you're still standing, you did it." The edges were curled, the ink slightly blurred where it had absorbed humidity from the years. I read it once then, once more. I didn't frame it. I didn't tuck it away. I left it on the fridge beside a grocery list. Paperclip loose. Intentional. I used to measure my worth in invitations received and names remembered. Now I write my own name on things, not because I need it seen, but because I no longer need it erased. Chapter 9. Final act to close closure doesn't always come with explanation. Sometimes it's just paper and a name you no longer wait to hear. They arrived just after 10. Ruth wore her navy sweater with the threadbare cuffs, and Clark Peterman held a manila folder that looked too crisp to belong in my kitchen. No one sat long. Ruth opened the folder and slid the documents across the table. No ceremony. No permission asked. Her handwriting in the margin was more deliberate. "This portion," she said, tapping the line goes to you outright. Then another line. "The rest stays as shared. For now." Clark nodded once. "Contingent on public acknowledgement before noon tomorrow. The terms will change otherwise." No names were spoken, just roles. Mother, sister, beneficiary, witness. My name, once spoken too little, was now printed too often. I offered no coffee. They didn't ask. Later, I sat alone with a blank card. the kind with a faint linen texture and no message inside. I wrote 4 sentences, folded the paper into thirds, slid it into an envelope, and sealed it without licking the flap. You don't have to take my side. I just need you to know I no longer live for proving myself. No return address. Only initials in the corner, not mine. Hers. I didn't open Facebook that night. I didn't need to read the words. Tara sent a screenshot anyway. Marlene's post was short. I want to apologize to my daughter, Sadie. I was wrong to question her choices. I'm proud of what she's built. No punctuation beyond the bare minimum. No photograph. Just enough to fulfill a requirement. Nothing more. I didn't reply. Instead, I went to the hallway, reached for the small frame that still hung beside the thermostat. A holiday photo from 7 years ago. My name was written on the back in ballpoint ink, faint, uneven, just the first name smudged at the edge. I opened the wooden keepsake box on the top shelf of the coat closet. The lid creaked once. I placed the frame inside next to the RSVP card. No one asked me to send a dried-out pen from Dad's office, and a grocery list with Stephanie's handwriting labelled, "For Mom, Sadie will pay." I wrote one line on the underside of the lid with a dull pencil. "Do not return." Then I closed it gently, as if that alone made it true. Grief doesn't always speak. Sometimes it just doesn't ask to be reminded. No one mentioned it was Everett's day. No calls, no group message, not even a forwarded meme with a clock and a prayer. But I remembered. He once called it the quiet day of the old season. He never explained what that meant, and I never asked. I filled Ruth's chipped kettle with water and waited without checking the flame. Mint, leaves from the garden curled slightly in the strainer. No sugar, no lemon. The cup steamed lightly, then settled. The kitchen held only what I used. A basket of oranges meant for marmalade, not display. A towel with fading edges. 3 frames on the wall, each holding a photo of wildflowers I'd taken on drives with no destination. None of them had people in them. The notebook on the shelf read, "Things that don't require saying." Most of its pages were blank, but one had a list of vegetables that tolerate partial shade. I carried compost to the garden, marked 2 new rows with a bit of twine, pressed my heel into the soil, and noted the depth with a line of pencil in the margin of the seed packet. I wrote beets, tentative, not because I doubted the soil, but because I liked the word better than hopeful. A wooden sign now hangs beside the fence, "Garden open for bees." I painted it last week. No one asked me to. A new email waited on my laptop. The subject line read, "She opened her first account." The body was brief. "Sadie, thank you for yesterday. One of the women came back this morning, said it was the first time she believed she could keep something that was hers." I closed the lid gently. The cursor had just stopped blinking. I opened the window. The air smelled faintly of warm metal and rosemary. I didn't need anyone to witness it. Not all quiet means something is missing. Sometimes it means nothing needs to be filled.